Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jesse, and today I'm kicking off a reading experience, a 6-week reading experience, not an experiment per se, but I am going to be doing 6 weeks of nonfiction books. I've kind of always been intimidated by nonfiction books. I've always kind of wanted to delve into that world, but I've just never been able to break into it until I found this specific book when I was in New York. That book being Dark Archives. When I looked this book up on Goodreads, I fell into this hole of all these nonfiction books on very niche topics. Very niche topics that had me wanting to stop, drop, and read the books right then and there. But I snapped myself out of it, gave myself a reality check, reminded myself that I am not capable of reading 1,200 books in one day, which led us here to this video. So in this video, I will be documenting the next 6 weeks as I read 6 nonfiction books. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure how this is going to go exactly. I don't know if I'm going to get into these nonfiction books and realize that they're just not for me, and that nonfiction as a whole is not a genre that I should necessarily be tapping into. I've only read a few nonfiction books in my lifetime, and those typically fall under the memoir category. I've been really trying to push myself outside of my comfort zone. Thank God, please drop the contemporary books, my guy. Not only to just kind of spice up my reading life. I can help spice up your reading life. But also I've found that in doing this recently and pushing myself to pick up books that I wouldn't normally, that I have found so many new favorite books. And it makes me wonder how many amazing books I'm holding myself back from in staying in this little comfort zone. So I am popping my comfort zone bubble, and that's exactly what I'm doing in this video. I'm going to be documenting my process over the next 6 weeks of reading these nonfiction books and sharing with you how I feel about them. I haven't picked out every book that I'm going to be reading yet for this video. I'm going to kind of just be doing that off the cuff as this video progresses. But the first book that I am going to be reading is Dark Archives. Let's all pretend to be shocked. When I found this book in the bookstore, I knew I had to have it. The second I read the tagline here, I was rushing to the cash register. It was one of those situations where I was kind of nervous of the cashier judging me for picking up this book because it is that absurd of a topic. Dark Archives is a librarian's investigation into the science and history of books bound in human skin. I had no idea that binding books in human skin was a thing until I found this book. And to be real, I'm a little bit nervous in reading this book because I feel like it could be very gruesome and gory and icky. Who are the people behind these bound books, and how gruesome is this book going to get? The more that I think about it, the more that I'm realizing that nonfiction might be the perfect genre for me because I am the most nosy person ever. Can confirm. Nosy AF. I like knowing things that I don't even need to know about. I like to know. If there's one thing about me, I want to be in the know. And I feel like nonfiction is a way to be nosy in a way that's respectful because you're reading a book that was made for you to be nosy, for you to be curious. Whereas being a nosy person in general can end up making you a little bit disrespectful. But we're not gonna talk about that. We're not talking about that. Why not?
Shush yourself, my guy.
It's time for reading. Let's kick off week 1 with Dark Archives. Week 1, I finished Dark Archives, and let me just say, this might be one of the most fascinating books that I've read. Dare I say the best book I've read so far in 2023? I think that might be true. He, in fact, said this a little prematurely. Check back with me at the end of the year when my best books of 2023 drops. Or just keep watching the video. While this topic is obviously disturbing to read about, the work that was done to uncover and explore this topic and the past owners of these books and then the people whose skin was used, still so jarring to even say that. All of those things easily make this book incredibly gripping. I feel like this is a topic that could easily have fallen into a very disrespectful place, where someone was just kind of looking to capitalize on a topic that's rather edgy. But the author approaches the research in a way where they want to respect the person whose skin was used. It's still so bizarre saying it like that, just so casually, she's trying to find the people whose skin was used. That's weird, but that's what happens in this book. And something that I liked about it is that it's almost the author's way of finding justice for this people. These people, a majority of them, there's only one case within the book where the person consented to their skin being used. They wanted their skin to be book binding, but all the other cases did not consent to having their skin used. Oh my God, Tom Nook just fell over. Listen, buddy, we can't be doing that, okay? You just lay down right there so you don't fall over again. So it's almost the author's way in finding justice for these people who did not consent to having their skin be used for bookbinding. All that to say, the research that is showcased throughout this book is done so in a rather gentle way. It's presented in a gentle way. When I rehumanize these books, suddenly the scores of human beings whom each book has touched cluster in my mind's eye like a community together holding one small object. That was the story I wanted to know. That was the story I wanted to tell. As of the writing of this book, the author and their team have only identified allegedly 50 anthropodermal anthropodermic books in public collections and private collections. Many of the books were not initially bound in skin, but were rebound by collectors whom typically were doctors. It also tackles the fact that there are a lot of books out there that are fake anthropodermic books, which begs the question, why would you fake that a book is bound in skin? And to that I have to say, money honey. People got that green on the brain. Some of the stories ended up stirring up such strong emotions within me. I was not expecting that, like, going into this book. You get insight on some of these anthropodermic book victims and how they ended up dying, and those bits of it just like made me emo, hurt my heart, made me sad. We get to see so many different angles throughout this book, which I really appreciated. Like, we get to see the research that goes into deciphering if a book is made of skin or not. The story of the person who actually wanted their skin to be used was fascinating. Be prepared for the word fascinating to pop up far too many times throughout this video. You've been warned. That story was a ride. And it also brings up a modern practice that feels similar to this practice. It's very different, but it feels somewhat similar. And it still kind of weirds me out. Like, it's a practice that I fully understand. Basically, it's the practice of removing tattoos and preserving them. Literally cutting off the part of the skin that the tattoo is on and framing it. I fully understand the practice. It is a consensual practice, so it's not like people just like stealing tattoos off of dead bodies, thankfully. But I still feel quite disturbed by this practice. It just like makes me feel uncomfortable, but like, to each their own, you know? So long as it's a consensual practice, I see nothing wrong with it. I freaking love this book. This was the perfect book to start out this project with because it just was like so intriguing from beginning to end. I never was bored reading it. I wanted to keep reading it. When I wasn't reading it, I was craving reading it. So A+, 5 out of 5 stars, a new favorite, that's for sure. Why did you literally look like you just saw an anthropodermic book in person just then? Like, those are the eyes of someone who either just saw a ghost or an anthropodermic book in person, even if it is disturbing and morbid. Which, speaking of disturbing and morbid, my next nonfiction book for this project is also somewhat weird, somewhat morbid. You say this like we should be surprised. And that book is Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. I believe this book is basically just kind of exploring the idea of cadavers and people who kind of offer up their dead bodies for different practices. And I'm very eager to find out what those practices are because I feel like I honestly don't know that much surrounding this topic. What are these bodies used for? What experimentations are these bodies used for? I will unlock all of that in reading this book. Again, another morbid book. What's wrong with me? That's a loaded question and we don't have enough time to unpack it. I'm excited for week 2. Time for reading. I finished Stiff. I also just bent the cover by throwing the book up in the air. Let this be a reminder that there are consequences to our actions. I think you're the only one that needed that reminder. I had a bit of a rocky start with this one, but once I caught that flow, I was flying on by when I was reading this book. I can't say it left me feeling deceased, but that's okay. Not every book can come into your life and make you feel deceased. Even though I was reading about deceased people and what happens to their bodies after they're deceased. Why are we talking like a robot? I think going into this one, I was already comparing it to Dark Archives from the start, from the get-go, because I came out of that one loving it and it was a banger from beginning to end. This one just took me a few chapters in order to catch its vibe, but I caught the vibe and we ended up making a great team by the end of it. It's fascinating at times. Fascinating, you say? It's weird at times. I may or may not have had a spiral here and there. As someone who thinks about death more than they probably should, this book was fascinating to me. Obviously, it tackles life after death and what happens to your bodies. If you offer your body up for research, what can come with that, and that part of it was like so fascinating to me. It was morbid and disturbing at times, let me be clear there. Like, some of the things that they do with the bodies, I was not expecting. I was caught off guard. Many a plot twist occurred while reading this book, but it does explore some things that you would expect. For example, like plastic surgeons practicing on the dead bodies, bodies being used as dummies for cars, and military use as well. The list goes on and on and on. There are normal things that you would expect, and then there are shocking revelations that will have you spiraling potentially. That I can confirm. It did to me have sort of this like eerie feeling the whole time reading it. Obviously, the research that is showcased throughout this book is very important, and the bodies that are offered up for that research are helping these different fields learn and grow their practice. I think I was just having a hard time comprehending everything, not in the fact that like it was hard to understand. Like, I understood what the bodies were being used for, but I think I was just like having a hard time wrapping my mind around it all, in the sense that like I had to keep reminding myself that the people were like dead, that their souls have left the bodies, and that it was okay, that they consented to these things happening. But there was still just something that stirred up this uncomfy feeling inside of me as I was reading it. Fascinating, eye-opening, disturbing. That's the best way that I can describe this one. While it is somewhat of a dark read, I feel like the author did a fantastic job of like bringing in lightheartedness to it at times and even humor. dark humor, obviously, but I really appreciated that because it could have just like stayed in this like really dark and morbid place, and the author never let that happen, so I appreciated that. The book that I will be reading for week 3 is Why We Swim. Can you guess what this one explores? Yes, we can, but you're going to explain it regardless. Swimming, perhaps? Nailed it. This one explores the art of swimming, humans' fascination with water, how we swim for pleasure, exercising, and healing. I'm super excited to swim my way into this one, so without further ado, let's dive on in. Please, Lord, stop the puns. I'll drop the horns and become a good little boy. It's time for reading. I finished Why We Swim, and I would have to say that this is probably my least favorite book so far in this video, which pains me to say, because like I've been enjoying a lot of the books that I've been reading, or the other 2 that I've read so far. That's all I've read so far, right? Yes, Grandpa, you've only read 3 so far. This is the third, but I wanted to love this. I wanted my love streak to continue, but it just kind of fell lower on the totem pole. I did enjoy it. It was a fascinating read about water and how water plays into our lives and how we connect to it as humans. But it felt like it was borderline a memoir, and I was just looking for books that kind of delved into one specific topic or several different topics and then left the personal experiences at home. I still enjoyed it. It's just not exactly what I was looking for, but this is also my fault because every review that I've read is like, it's a happy marriage of investigative journalism and a memoir. I'm the clown. I blame myself. I blame you too. I saw the pool and I dove into it. My favorite moments throughout the book though were when the author kind of honed in on specific topics surrounding water. From the health benefits that come from swimming. In fact, some of my favorite parts were learning about people who have chronic pains and how water helps them so much. People who have things like arthritis, high blood pressure. Swimming can be incredibly beneficial for people who have those things. I really enjoyed the bits on competitive swimming. We have a focus on the Olympic swimmer Dara Torres, though her drive did make me self-conscious because she is incredibly driven and I barely have the drive to wake up in the morning. So I'm gonna need her to pass over some of her drive. Come on, hand it over. There was a section that I really wish I would have marked. I did not annotate at all while reading this book, and I have many regrets doing that, but there was like one section in particular where the author explores how people choose to live by water because it's like the ultimate source of serenity, which is something that I relate to because every time I go to the beach, like I just feel the most peaceful, the most comforted. I do wonder though, like if living by the water, you just kind of get used to it and it's just kind of like a normal thing and you don't really find it as peaceful or calming. If you're somebody who lives by a body of water, let me know your thoughts on that. Like, do you find it peaceful or have you gotten to a point where you're like, I'm just used to it. That's water. It's like a tree. It's like grass. I'm very curious. It does answer the question, why do we swim? And kind of explores the history of that while also bringing in the author's personal experiences. I would say that this book has a very specific target audience. And I feel like if you grew up swimming, grew up near water, or just in general have some sort of fascination with water, then I would recommend checking this one out. Give it a swim. Cannonball your way into this book. I'm trying to work in swimming puns and I need to stop. Yes, please make it stop. I'm gonna dive out of this book and dive into talking about the next book. Boy, you said you'd stop. The next book that I'm going to is one that I have on my shelf and I forgot about it until I was like browsing my shelves recently and I was like, oh, I should read that for this video. And that one is World of Wonders. This is basically a book that explores animals and nature and the world of wonders. He must be stopped. So basically we've got animals like octopus, flamingo, axolotl, peacocks. Looks like we've got an eel situation, a narwhal. So we're exploring all these different animals, learning about them, and I just feel like it's going to open me up to a world of wonders. I'm excited for this one. It has beautiful illustrations throughout it, so like sign me up for that. Like look at the frogs. Anyway, time for reading. I finished World of Wonders, and again, unfortunately, just like Why We Swim, this book was definitely more in the memoir lane, which is fine, that's not a bad thing. But for this video in particular, I was looking for nonfiction books that were not memoir-based. It was still enjoyable, I still had a good time reading it, I loved the writing style, and I loved hearing about the author's different life experiences. I just wish that the author would have gone deeper with all these like interesting creatures and nature-y bits that were being brought up throughout the book. The major thing that I did love about this book though is that the author took these varying creatures and connected them to stories within her own life. It was a very creative take on a memoir situation, and it also like weirdly felt somewhat magical. It kind of challenges you in some ways to kind of look around you, look at the creatures around us, whether it be a dog, a cat, a bird, and think about the ways in which your life or a situation that you've been through kind of mimics the actions and the things that these animals and creatures do.
The next time I see a dog taking a dump, I'll keep this in mind.
I just really liked that aspect of it. Not bad, not the best, just not really what I was looking for. The next book I am reading is one that I'm super excited about, and that book is Gory Details: Adventures from the Dark Side of Science. This book highlights all the weird, morbid, and disturbing things within the world that we all try to forget, or we try our best not to think about. Without further ado, time for reading. And we're back. I've read Gory Details, and full disclosure, it has been a few weeks since I have updated this video, and that is because I got a freaking huge cold sore on my lip, and your boy didn't want to film. There's still some scarring there. We're still healing. Just ignore it. Just look past it. Just listen to my voice. Don't look at my lip. But now that I'm drawing attention to my lip, you're going to be looking at my lip. But anyway, I've technically read the last 2 books for this video, and by technically reading the last 2 books, he means he has definitely read the last 2 books. So I'm going to be updating you on both of them and wrapping up this video. Let's talk Gory Details. I honestly did not think that any book would come through and take the crown from Dark Archives, but that's exactly what this book did. It came in swinging. It came for the crown and stole the crown. Snatched, dethroned, ba-boom. Mind you, I still love Dark Archives and I still highly recommend it. This one is just now my favorite. I love how this book is just like a collection of strangeness. It's almost like you're going through a buffet and just like picking at all these like really weird topics. Every page is filled to the brim with absurdity of things that you probably don't even want to think about, but it breaks into it in such a fantastic way.
Fantastic, you say? I've never heard you ever describe any book as fantastic ever.
I loved the author's writing style and hearing their commentary on each of the topics, and you could just like tell the amount of research that went into this book, which is something that I always really appreciate when it comes to nonfiction. I want to know the research going into these topics. I want the receipts. I want the deets. And all of those things were delivered throughout this book. It's all these bite-sized sections covering these varying topics, and it's the kind of book where once I reached the end, I just wanted more. I was sad it was ending. I'll give you a few examples of some of the things that it covers, though again, there are topics in here that you probably don't even want to know about. It explores pets eating their owners' dead bodies. This was the most notable part of that section for me. It says, the hamster case was quite nasty. A 43-year-old woman in Germany was found dead in her apartment with wounds to her face and head. And at first investigators thought she had been attacked, but then they looked in a drawer and found her pet golden hamster's nest, lined with shreds of its owner's skin, fat, and muscle tissue. I had a hamster as a kid, and I always have dreamed of like getting another one as an adult, but no thank you, my mind has been changed. There's a section on necrophilia, and let me just say that that section had me shook.
Can confirm Jesse is still in fact shook.
Like, I felt incredibly disturbed reading that section in particular. There's a disturbing section on bugs finding their way inside of humans. Could have done without reading that section, to be honest. Roaches are the most common invaders of the human body worldwide. In a period of 2 years, a South African hospital pulled a total of 24 critters out of people's ears. 10 were German cockroaches, followed by 8 flies, 3 beetles, a tick, an assassin bug, and a badly mangled moth. Ears appear to be the most common points of entry, according to doctors that frequently have to remove them. That section just had me all sorts of itchy. My favorite thing that I learned in this book is that more people actually die of constipation than shark attacks, but because constipation deaths don't make the evening news, they don't come to mind as easily. I know that this is a book that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, like I get that, but like it's one that I highly recommend if you are just interested in like really disturbing and eerie topics. And I feel like this is the perfect season to read this book because I don't know about y'all, but like it's October, that means it's Halloween month. I'm reading all the creepy, scary, spoopy things, and so I highly recommend checking out Gory Details for this season. The next book that I'm going to be talking about that I already read for this video, we've got FUZZ, When Nature Breaks the Law. This is by Mary Roach. Mary Roach also wrote Stiff, which I read earlier in this video. This book was pitched as being about animals breaking the law and animals being taken to court. This is where I say time for reading, but I have already read the book, so I've read the book. Let's talk about it. Here's a little transition for you. Wow, fancy transition. It's been so long since we've last talked. I've been trying to like match myself to the books, but this just does not really match. But yellow, 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 yellow. Despite really enjoying Stiff by the same author, Mary Roach, this one fell incredibly flat for me. The topics that were discussed were still really interesting, but I found that it veered off topic a lot, and then it also just like dragged on and on and on and gave like way too much detail over things to a point where it's like, okay, are we just trying to hit a page length? Like, that's what I felt a majority of the time reading this. I was like, we are just trying to make a deadline here. We're trying to hit a page mark, a certain page mark, instead of just like making a banger of a book. We are just pushing for a specific word count. Now, like I said, this book is pitched on crimes that animals have committed. And while there are bits on that topic, it switches lanes and goes into a completely different arena. I feel like there was just so much meat missed there. Like, I feel like had it kind of stayed in that lane, it would have been really interesting. But I just spit it out. And I just feel like there was so much meat there that like we didn't even explore. Like there was so many more cases that probably could have been brought up but weren't brought up. And I get that Mary Roach likes to cover like an array of different topics under an umbrella. Like Stiff in particular, it does cover cadavers, but it covers like a lot of different topics surrounding cadavers. Whereas I feel like with this one, she was trying to do the same thing. But like to me, the interesting bits were kind of rushed and brushed over, and I just feel like there was so much in here that could have been dragged on that would have made it much more interesting. But because she kind of does like to kind of, you know, bounce around within different topics under an umbrella, that we just like missed out on exploring this one particular topic at length. And that was just what made this book so unfortunate for me, because I feel like there were interesting bits being explored at the beginning, and then it just like veers off and does something completely different. I've only read 2 books by her, but maybe that's just like what she's trying to do with all of her nonfiction books, which is fine. Do your thing, Mary. This just wasn't for me. It does cover this like very complicated issue of humans versus wildlife, and how that can be just like a very gray and confusing area when conflict occurs. And it delves into how there are humane and inhumane ways to kind of deal with that conflict. And to me, I think the most interesting bits were when these conflicts were taken to court and just seeing how things ended up going down. Oh, to be a fly on the wall during those court sessions. Because it does just like sound comedic, like taking an animal to court. But like it does happen. Like that's a thing that's happened. It just like is something that's so hard to wrap my mind around. I'm gonna be blunt in saying that my biggest problem with this book is that I just ended up being bored while reading it. I don't even think it's like the topic's fault. Like it's an interesting topic and there's so much you can do and explore with it, but I think it's how it was delivered. A lot of the humor didn't land with me. Like I had a fun time reading Stiff. Like there was so much like dark, interesting humor in that book, and the humor in this one just like didn't land. It just like felt like she was trying too hard. And then just like the weaving in and out of topics was just a little too jarring for me this time around. That's not to say that I will never read a nonfiction book by Mary Roach again, because I think that she is very talented and I think she does do the research. I just feel like this one in particular was a miss for me. We have reached the end of the video. We have reached the end of this 6-week long video, even though it was technically like 8 weeks because I got a freaking cold sore towards the end of it and it screwed everything up. Freaking cold sore. But I read 6 nonfiction books in 6 weeks, and I feel like I achieved what I set out to do when kind of approaching this video. One, that is to break into a section of books that I am not used to, that being nonfiction. I feel like I have kind of been intimidated by nonfiction for a long time just because it's kind of intimidating. Like there's so many books and you don't know where to start. And thankfully I stumbled across Dark Archives, and it was a stepping stone into finding more nonfiction books that I feel like would be right up my alley. So I'm forever grateful to you, Dark Archives. Thank you very much. And I feel like the other thing that I did is just like stepping outside of my comfort zone when it comes to reading, because I can often just find myself in a comfortable place when it comes to what I read, the books that I am choosing to pick up. And I feel like this was a great way for me to kind of like step outside of that for a little while and just try something new, try something different. And in doing so, I found several new books that I love. 2 that I would consider new all-time favorites, which is very exciting. I can't wait to continue to recommend them until the end of time and annoy you guys with my repetitive recommendations. I'm gonna do my ranking now from best to worst. First up here, no surprise I'm sure, Gory Details. I give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. In second place, we've got Dark Archives. I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars as well. In third place, we've got Stiff. I would give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Why are the most morbid ones in my top 3?
No one, absolutely no one is surprised, Jesse.
In fourth place, we've got World of Wonders. I would give this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. In fifth place, we've got Why We Swim. I would give this book a 3 out of 5 stars. In sixth and last place, I'm sure this is no surprise, we've got Fuzz, and I would give this book a 2 out of 5 stars. Those are the books that I read for this video and their ranking from best to worst. That is it for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun reading these books and talking about them, and I hope that you guys enjoy some of the recommendations I have for you. I want to hear from from you guys down below in the comments. Have any of you read nonfiction? If so, what are some of your favorite nonfiction books? And if not, which is totally fine if you haven't read nonfiction books, let me know a genre that is kind of outside of your comfort zone that you've dabbled into recently. I want to know all about it. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright, that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye. Yellow, yellow, bleh. Yellow, 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 bleh, bleh. Yellow, 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 yellow. Why is that so hard to say so fast? Yellow, 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 bleh, bleh. Yellow, 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 yellow. I can't do it.